Welcome to Skin and Soul. I'm Gwenm Carsley, a transformational body, sex, and soul coach, and I'm inviting you on a bold, unfiltered journey into the heart of our humanity through the lens of Eros. This is where we strip away the shame, dive into the unspoken, and embrace the wild, raw truth of our desires. Together, we'll crack open the taboo, uncover our deepest intimacies, and awaken the pulse of our sexual essence. Because real transformation, it's messy, it's thrilling, and it's oh so delicious. Buckle up, loves. Skin and Soul Beyond the Pale starts in 3, 2, 1. Let's go. Hello and welcome back. I'm Gwenm and I'm the host of Skin and Soul. I'm also a body, sex, and soul coach, creator of Rewilding. And today I have my very first guest, who I am honored to say I know quite well. I've had the opportunity to work with him. It is Kevin Hawkins, who is a somatic-based sex coach who weaves in Tantra, who is trauma-informed, who works with men, women, couples, and we'll get to talking a little bit about that much later on, but right now we're gonna dive into his journey. So I just want to say welcome. I'm so honored to have you here.
Thank you.
And yeah, so I'm just going to dive right in because we know each other, but I just thought a nice place to start would be what your definition of intimacy was before you started your journey, and then I'll let you play.
Yeah. No, before I started my journey, that would probably be like almost 10 years ago. I was in a long-term relationship. I had gotten into that relationship at a young age, right out of high school. Married my junior high sweetheart. Yeah, I was in a long-term relationship, a beautiful relationship, but definitely had its struggles. So my definition of intimacy was definitely shaped by my culture, which was heavily in the religious realm at that time in my younger age. And so my definition of intimacy was really just sex. That was it, right? To be intimate was to have sex, right? Was to get naked and to have sex. So it was a very, very simple definition of intimacy, a very um, um, should we say, from my learnings and my growings and my studies now, it's a very shallow definition as well, of what intimacy could be and what we're all actually craving. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I'd say it was very simple. And I think there's a lot of people out there who, when they hear the word intimacy, their mind just goes to, the sexual act, right? Your intimacy with your intimate partners, right? And that's it, is that intimacy. So
Mm-hmm.
that would
Yeah,
probably
and
be,
did you feel at any point when you were in your long-term relationship that there was something missing, that the intimacy, or was that the baseline and it was good as is?
well, yeah, I would definitely, the intimacy started to lag over time. I think again, I probably speak to a lot of people here that, that can fade away. I have a more of a unique story in that I was able to support my partner coming out of the closet. She was gay, and so we navigated that for a while. But that element that was still in the closet for many, many, many years definitely played a role in our intimate relationship. And it was a struggle. It was a struggle because we were not like meeting each other where we needed, that connection. So it did lag, and it was not enough, and it was a hole, an emptiness in my
Mhm.
own life. So yeah. So since
And
then
was
we
that, well,
since then
since then,
we've navigated a separation navigably. We have two children together, and it threw me into a big journey of intimacy, and what was intimacy, that simple definition of, just sex, just kind of that nakedness, right? That simple connection, wasn't good enough anymore. So I really was forced to jump into and start to really explore what intimacy could be.
mm. And I'm curious because your wife turned out to be gay, right? Like I wonder if that hit the chord of your masculinity at all, or whether that actually had an influence into diving deeper into what would become like really diving into what intimacy is and sexuality and all of that. But
Mhm.
had it been, and I don't know if you can answer that question, but like, if it just had been a traditional divorce or a
Right,
traditional separation,
right.
whether you feel like you would have been pushed to that edge in the same way, or whether that was already there as you were kind of exiting, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Um, Yeah, that is a difficult question, but I would say that I was already on the verge of wanting to explore that. I had looked into Tantra before my separation with my ex-wife, and I had explored a little bit more. So I was cracking the door open into redefining for myself what intimacy was. Um, yeah, with being a maybe like, should we say, a non-traditional breakup, which is normally, um, comes with fights and a lot of disconnection, right?
Mhm.
Ours was not that way so much. So it was different in that regard, but I was already going down that path a little bit, and that was from a hunger. That was from a lack of not getting that fulfilled in my life and not having enough of that intimacy that I defined as intimacy um, any longer. So yeah. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, 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 yeah. No, no, and that's great. And I love that you embraced, like, it sounds like you embraced your wife coming out, and so that
Yeah.
instead of pushing against it, yeah, which is a beautiful thing to experience when you can have, like you said, a separation that is not
Yeah.
based on arguments, and that you just realize that you're going in separate paths. And I know that when we met, I'm just going to bring in the polyamorous piece, right, which
Oh
was
yeah.
like this, like, oh yeah. This is who I am now, and I'm just wondering a little bit how you went from being in a very monogamous relationship
Yeah.
that went one way, and then just kind of what happened at that crack of I'm alive and I'm open and what's going on and I'm
Right.
just going to enter life. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. There was definitely that, like you said, that big deep inhale of freedom and stuff. But in all honesty, I'm not poly.
Mhm,
Fundamentally, I am monogamous.
mhm,
So the poly is maybe a bad way to describe my just kind of my sowing of my oats, right? My awakening of my desire and my passion, right? And so I have defined that as poly, but I really even at the moment I wasn't poly. I was
yeah.
just with one person at a time,
Mhm,
but by defining it in that moment as poly, it gave me the freedom I needed to do what I wanted to do, right?
yeah.
Which I felt was important, right? And so poly was a wider fence, a broader fence that allowed me to really explore where I needed to go without bumping into an edge. But
Mhm,
in all honesty, like fundamentally, I am monogamous and I really enjoy it. And I'm now in a monogamous, beautiful relationship with my beloved, and
mhm,
she's incredible. And it is so amazing to be in a relationship like this. That yeah, this is what I love. This is what I
yeah.
love. So yeah,
Yeah. And I want to come back to that. I just want to just address the piece because you said like, oh, I always knew like I wasn't, right? And
right,
I think one thing I can speak to is when I left my marriage, right? I was just so hungry
right,
that I didn't want to push against any edges because I was like, whatever you're going to feed me is good right now. Like
right,
I want to experience and I want to know what it is that feels good in my
right.
skin and what's authentic. And
Hmm.
so for you, learning, your learning curve around what felt good for you,
Right.
just speaking to a little bit around your own sensual journey and
Yeah,
discovering like, oh, this is my body, this is my masculinity, and
right.
this is my feminine, this is my masculine, like all of those pieces, right? This
Yeah,
is what my body and my being hungers for.
yeah.
Just a little bit about that journey.
Yeah. So again, kind of using the definition of poly for myself allowed that fence to kind of be put out a lot further, so I wouldn't have to worry about running into a fence. Um, it was an element of going too far as well. I think that can be important when you are in a healthy, safe space that you can go too far. It's like getting on a roller coaster that you're like, I'm not sure if I'm gonna like this, right? But you get
Mhm.
on, you're like, wow, that was amazing. Or you get on and you're like, wow, I'm never doing that again,
Mhm.
right? And I think having being safe within yourself and being ready for that in that intimacy journey and going, yep, I'm not that, right? I don't like that. I think that's really important because what it did is it broke down a lot of the structures that I had grown up with,
Mhm.
and the definitions and the fences and the borders, or should we say gigantic castle walls, right? It broke that down, and allowed me to define what I wanted,
Yeah.
right? Instead of just it being prescriptive, it was something like I chose, right? And so again, it was kind of like that sowing of my wild oats. And it was an opportunity for me to explore and to make mistakes. And I think in
Mhm.
our society, we're really cautious to make mistakes, but if you're doing it from a place of safety and true curiosity and tiptoeing, I mean, you're not gonna like jump full into like some crazy stuff, but that's a really good thing to do is to like find that edge, and and now you can dial it back, and I think that's really powerful. Um, and I also learned a lot. There's a lot of benefits from the poly community that I think the monogamous community could greatly benefit from, right?
Mhm.
And so I was able to kind of dabble in that and experience that and feel that and go like, oh, I do want these elements, right? And I think that's for a lot of us maybe that are who have the constraints being pulled away.
Yeah.
We're wanting something that maybe that other group is really demonstrating well, right? And I'll give you an example. In the poly community, communication is extremely important, right? You have to be communicating a lot because of what you're doing, right? So communication and open conversations about feelings and experiences are highly valued in the poly community. And
Yeah.
there just seemed to be missing a lot more in the monogamous community, right? And so I was able to take that skill set. I was able to take that nugget of truth and wisdom that the poly community does well at and bring that back with me when I did decide to go more into the monogamous realm of things, right? And so I like to say that my partner and I, we are monogamous, but we're in union. And I
Mhm.
really like that. And I don't want to prescribe union on other people. I don't want to say this is necessarily the best course of action for everyone, but for us, it really seems to solidify what we're doing, right? And that union is really coming back to ourselves. It's really coming back to ourselves.
Mhm.
So my union with Candace is about actually exploring myself and being my fullest self with her. And in return, it's about her being her fullest self and asking for what she wants and being strong enough and having a partner that supports that and gives that space and says, who are you and how do I make you better? Right? So it is a union with a partner, but it starts with a union with yourself and a self-expression, which is, to kind of go full circle, that's kind of my definition of intimacy now, is
Mhm.
really like standing in your own glory and power, right? That is intimacy, right? So intimacy, therefore, is vulnerable, right? If I stand here and say, this is me, this is all of me, right? There's going to be people that don't like me, right?
Mhm.
And so there's that vulnerability there that keeps people from being intimate, right? Um, and because we don't want to be judged, we don't want to be criticized, we don't want to be taken down. But in my experience, in a good union, that goes away and you are totally accepted. It's this unconditional love that
Mhm.
can flow. Now, that's not easy to do, and we are still on a journey in that, right? We
Yeah.
haven't arrived, but to move in that direction and consciously call that out inside of me and inside of her is an incredible thing and extremely intimate. Extremely.
Yeah, and I think there's really opportunity for that. And I've heard this said somewhere else, that, like particularly where we are now, time-wise, society, whatever, that there's this beautiful opportunity for what you're calling union. What is it? I think David Data uses intimate communion or something,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
which I love. And I don't think there is an arrival place. There's never an arrival. Like there's always a place that the edges are going to hit somewhere, because otherwise we've stopped growing.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, when you met, is it Candace?
Yes.
Yeah. So when you met Candace, where was she on her? Like, was she able to meet you there? Was there like healing that had to be done? Because like, I'm like, yeah, it's great to walk in and say there's unconditional love.
Yeah.
However, I
Yeah.
think there can only be unconditional love is when you meet yourself there first. Like, there's no way that you can show up and that allows for things like mistakes to happen,
Yeah.
right? If you love yourself first and you know how to come back to yourself, then you can also show up in a very different way, I think,
Yeah.
with another in that union that you're talking about. Because I think, truly in our younger years, we are doing the shit show, right? It's all about like, it's chaotic. I can't imagine being in a relationship with myself, like,
Right.
in my 20s.
Yeah.
And then 30s was all about the self growth. And then it's sort of like you get to this place where you're like, I know what I want.
Right. Yeah. Super important. Super,
Yeah.
super important.
So in terms
And
of Candace, where was she?
yeah, no, she and I actually, it's quite hilarious and quite miraculous. We actually had very similar paths.
Mm.
She also was in a long-term relationship. She also has children with her ex-husband and had separated with him as well, roughly around the same time in the calendar. And she had been exploring as well. She'd been exploring the poly as well, right? That definition and going like, oh yeah, I like this, but I don't like that, right? Um, and what's really interesting in both of our stories is for about a year, we stopped dating and started dating ourselves. And this was really big for me. It was actually a moment where I I deleted all the apps. I stopped looking around. I stopped asking. I stopped having that eye of like, oh, what's out there, right? And I turned way inward and I started dating myself. I would dress up in my suit and tie and I'd go out for sushi by myself. I'd come home, I'd get into the bathtub and I'd had sexy time with myself, right? And I just put myself as a priority and my healing as a priority. And right before Candace and I met, I was actually going through about a 3 week long ceremony of um, it would be a funeral for the concept of a beloved that I wasn't finding
Okay.
because I wasn't looking inside myself.
Hmm.
So I was in a 3 week ceremonial space that I was actually laying to rest this concept of being fulfilled by someone else in this deepest way that I wanted.
Hmm.
I was actually putting that in the ground. I was letting it go so that I could find it in myself. And I remember saying, if I don't find anyone to meet me, will I be okay? Will I still have the love I need? Will I find that in God inside of me? Right? And she
Hmm.
was also in that space as well, where she was letting go of this idea and this concept. And hey, if they never show up, am I going to be okay to always be in this state? Can I love myself enough to be satisfied here and now? And as soon as we moved into that empty, hollow space, we showed up for each other.
Beautiful.
And we
Okay.
came
I'm going to
crashing
leave.
into each other's lives.
So sorry, we're just going to take a quick break. I want to leave everyone with that thought
Yeah,
is, can you be with yourself? Can you be
right,
with yourself and date yourself and love yourself unconditionally, knowing that someone else may never arrive?
right.
And I'm going to leave everyone with that thought, and we will be right back. Great. And we are back. I'm Gwenm on Skin and Soul, and we're talking to Kevin Hawkins. And we just ended up talking about dating and dating the self and how important it is to be able to love yourself so much and to be able to give yourself the things that you might not get in relationship, and also to be able to bring that forward and into conscious partnerships. So
Mhm.
we're going to continue and just allow this conversation to flow wherever it's going. There we
Yummy.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah, yummy. Yeah. So, and I love that. So I actually, to get a little bit grittier, because I think it's also really important to talk about the body. And you talked about having dates with yourself. So planning those dates, having sexy time. And I want you to talk a little bit more about sexy time, like self solo play, because I think people just literally either rub, I'm going to use the term rub one off, right?
Hmm.
That there isn't a whole lot of consciousness around self-pleasuring, and that there's a lot of shame, particularly in partnership, turning over, rolling over, masturbating next to your partner,
Right.
not usually like wanted. So,
Yeah.
or not always, but it comes up. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I just want you to speak a little bit more to
Yeah.
your own self practices.
Yeah, sure. Well, through my dating years between my lovership and my union with Candace and my almost sexless marriage, I did learn how to actually have really productive sexy time with myself. And I really like that term sexy time over like masturbation or something like that, right? Because masturbation tends to just lead to orgasm, right? And what I have discovered with sexy time is it's a sensual practice. You are waking up the senses, you are waking up parts of your body that, you may not have noticed before or realized were felt good. So it's a lot of exploration for exploration's sake, right? And we chase the orgasms, we chase that high many times because we're wanting actually to escape,
Hmm.
right? That orgasm can be for some people this escapism, right? This immense relaxation that happens afterward or something like that, right? When what my sexy time was about was actually connecting with my body. So it was more educational and
Hmm.
more of a learning environment. So, like playing with different types of touch all over my body, playing with different textures and feelings and impact and stuff like that, and what felt good and what didn't felt good, and when does one thing feel good and when does another thing feel good, right? And what it really taught me was that it is impossible for me to fully even understand myself. So it's really difficult to even ask that of my partner. So I learned in my self-pleasuring how to actually ask for what I want in the moment. One part of the month you're gonna feel one thing, right? Another part you maybe another thing, right? And your partner is, you don't even necessarily know that, hey, that felt good last week, but it doesn't feel good this week, right? So by learning this and realizing this element of myself, I learned that it was super important to have that communication, very similar to the poly community we talked about earlier, right? With my partner in bed. Oh, that doesn't feel so good, right? And so I started giving myself that feedback so that when I did come back to a partner, I was able to just generally just accept that as like, oh, I'm getting feedback of this person, right? And I want to encourage that in my partner, and I want to encourage that in myself. So there was a lot of sensual exploration in that realm of things. I also was exploring a lot of kind of sexy pilot light. Sometimes we call it a pilot light when there's just this little flame that's inside of us that just keeps a smile on your face, right? And it's those moments when you see like a bright red door as you're driving by the street and you're like, "Whoa, wow. That's cool," right? And that just caught my attention and it kind of brightened my day a little bit, right? Or maybe a sunrise or a sunset or one thing for me is like a nice pair of like high heel shoes on a woman, like the shoes, like, oh my God, that's like so sexy, right? Like I'm not trying to, idolize or, be anything bad. I'm really admiring those shoes and what they do for me. right?
Totally. Well, let's face it, what it does to a woman's butt, legs, everything. I mean, that's why
Sure.
they were created,
Yeah.
essentially. They
Yeah.
certainly weren't for like orthopedic purposes, right? It was
No.
to
Yeah.
highlight really
Yeah.
women's breasts, women's ass, like it's
Yeah.
like it was a lift up the leg, everything. So
Yeah.
it's meant to be admired.
It is meant to be admired. And I
Hmm.
think that's one element that in the kind of maybe the more constrained environments that people grow up, that's something that's not allowed in men, right? I know when I grew up in a conservative environment that, admiring a woman was not like encouraged. It was not allowed, right? And it's not that I go along down the street just oogling and googling and whistling at women, right? There's a big difference, and I think that's what the conservative community is trying to protect against is from that unhealthy admiring. And I've learned to do the healthy admiring where I can go up to a grocery store clerk and go like, wow, your eyes are stunning, right? And it's a true compliment, right? I'm not trying to get her phone number. I'm not trying to do anything like that. I'm just like, I'm admiring and honoring this unique human in front of me, right? And I think that's the place of the masculine energy in all of us is to do that, is to recognize, wow, that's beautiful. That motivates me. The feminine energy is the inspiration,
Hmm.
right? And the masculine is the gratification, right? Like, wow, thank you for your inspiration, right? And so,
Well, we
remembering
forget.
that.
So I just want to jump in and say, sorry,
Yeah,
that flirtation, and we forget that flirting isn't, when we talk about this as like eros and sexuality. I mean, you can flirt with, a baby, the
yeah,
flowers that you're walking by, right? Like the flirtation is the energy, and the intent is a whole other matter. But I don't think we teach, certainly not men and women, that it's
right,
okay to flirt, and that this
right.
conservatism that happens is, I think, really based in a deep fear, because most
Yeah,
people aren't conscious about what they're doing.
yeah,
That's
hmm,
honesty, right?
yeah,
Like I think there's a lot of, I don't even want to say men, because I think women can be there too, but definitely in a sense of the unsafe masculine or whatever. It's
sure.
just that there tends to be this unconsciousness around it. But to
Yes,
walk around and you can feel intent, right? Like I can feel when somebody is just like, wow, you have great eyes or whatever it is, or
right.
I love what you're wearing. And I happen to love when I hear that, both like from anybody, right? So,
Yeah,
as women come up, we don't hear that often either, just to be
right.
able to offer like a genuine, oh, that looks great on you, from a stranger in particular. We
Right.
shut that down. So, offering that and being able to walk in that,
Mm-hmm.
with consciousness, and to be able to offer that and play. Like there's nothing
Right,
wrong with flirting, like,
right.
it's fun and it's play, and it doesn't, I think where it feels dangerous as a woman is like, oh, I can't be myself.
Right.
I can't be open and playful and fun,
Mhm.
because it's going to be misconstrued and taken in the wrong way.
That's right.
And so, what's come up for me, and a question for you, is like, when you do work with men, because I know you work with men in men's circles and
Yeah.
so on, is like, what do you think is some of the biggest recurring obstacles that happen for them that are showing
Mhm.
up?
Um, so many. So many things. I think a very common one is actually a wounded feminine energy within men.
Mm,
So let me back up and kind of explain that I believe that all humans have masculine and feminine energy within ourselves. If you um, fall into, or if it's easy to be in your feminine energy more often, then you're naturally going to present yourself in society and out there as more feminine, right? In the traditional feminine. And if you find yourself um, more in the masculine energy, you're probably going to present or be interpreted in our society as more as a man, right? But we all have these ideal ratios within inside of us, right? So you might be 50-50, right? 50% of the time I like to be in my masculine energy, 50% I like to be in my feminine energy. There's no ideal ratio, but what's important is that you know what your ratio is. right? So there
Mhm.
might be someone, we might call him like an alpha male, maybe, who is 95% in his masculine and only 5% in his feminine energy, right? So that's the first step is for people to really understand that we all have masculine and feminine in us. We all have that capacity and that capability. And that's not to say that, you know, that you're gay or anything like that. It's not to challenge your sexuality or your sexual preferences. Those are completely different topics. This is an energy. This is an energy space, right? And so we have those ideal ratios, and then within inside those ideal ratios, we can also have like immature masculine, we can
Mhm.
have mature masculine, right? We can have immature feminine and mature feminine. So all these forces, and there's many things pulling us in different directions here when it comes to these energies, but a lot of men are not truly embodying their feminine energy. They think I need to be 100% masculine, right? All the time.
Brutal, right? Like I
Yeah.
think a man who is 100% masculine is that, I mean, has that potential of brutality, right? If you don't have the
Yes.
softness to
Yes.
to balance out the masculine, then you're talking about brute force, aggression,
Right.
um, abusiveness, that kind of thing, because it's showing up in a
Yeah.
way that is just hasn't, it's just it almost has no
It's not
consciousness, right?
it's
Like
not
it has just
tempered.
no emotion. Yeah, it's not
It's not
tempered
tempered
with
by the
emotion and will.
feminine wisdom of grace
Mhm.
and gentleness and stuff like that that strong masculine also needs
Mhm.
to provide a safe space for themselves and for others. Another is our experience with other people's energies, right? I kind of mentioned before that a lot of men have experienced unhealthy feminine energy, right?
Mhm.
And when men do that, they tend to be pretty extreme. They'll be like, I'm never going there again, right? I'm never going to do that again, and we just write it all off, right? And I'm not going to do that, right? Or I'm not going to be that person anymore, right? And it's very extreme because actually men are very sensitive creatures. We
Yeah.
actually are very sensitive. Um, we feel a lot. We really do. We feel a lot. We're not allowed to express that. We're not
Mhm.
allowed to show that. We're not allowed to, let that course through our bodies, but we still feel it. And so I think men are repressed in that regard a lot. And a lot of it is because they don't have an outlet. And that's where men's group is going to be so important going forward for the human race that men actually can meet with other men and have an outlet. Because in the men's group, there can be a space, if done well, where men can actually let those emotions flow and be seen and be heard and feel safe. Because men also want to feel safe. We
Mhm.
always think, the women don't feel safe. This is true, but men also need to feel safe. But they need to feel safe with other men generally first. The masculine energy is always the leading, always is first. A woman who is alone has to be into her masculine energy first. She's got to, you know, pay the rent. She's got to do all sorts of stuff. And when all of that masculine type of energy is done in her life,
Mhm.
then she can be in her feminine. She can then take a bath with rose petals and things like that. Then she can be more in her feminine juicy side. But not until, all of the stuff is done. And if she doesn't have a masculine in her life doing that, she has to do those things first. And it's because we
Absolutely.
live in this physical world, and the masculine energy is the leader of the physical world, right? And again, we all have that. We all do it. We all have to pay the rent, right? We all have to get groceries, right? And that's our masculine caretaking part of us that is
Mhm.
super important. And
Yeah, it's
so,
getting lost in the aisles with the fruit and the yummy scents that is the feminine. And then, I mean, I know for myself is that I've been alone now for a really long time, and
mhm,
it took me a long time to like. I literally I'm going to say I created not a persona, but kind of like could really feel into the energy of my own masculine and
yes,
embodied, and just, in moments of needing structure, or in the
yes,
moments of needing that sense of protection, like calling in literally on this energy to hold and cocoon the places in me that are
right,
very tender. Because because I think there's also and for women, it's the opposite, right? Like moving through life through the masculine is not our natural place of being. And
Right.
so wanting to surrender into a masculine, wanting to have that
Right.
structure in life, that is healthy. And
Right.
half the time, I know in our own, it's not even healthy, right? Just by what we've been taught about what the masculine is and what's
Yeah.
dangerous and what's
Right.
acceptable and not acceptable. So just noticing like in your men's groups, I'm wondering like, how when men come together I love that you have this space because it's
Mm.
either done well or it's not done well, right?
Right.
And that's the honesty.
Yeah.
What do you see really being nourished amongst these men
Hmm.
and into like a birthing consciousness or
Hmm. It's everyone has their own journey for sure. But a lot of it is a freedom.
mm,
It's a freedom to express. We are not, like I mentioned earlier, we're not allowed to show our emotions in this culture, right? As much. We're not allowed to do certain stuff. And in all honesty, the feminine energy is not designed to hold the masculine emotion,
mm,
right? That's not what the feminine wants, right? And so men need to hold space for men because then the man can come to me and cry and stuff like that and complain, and I can hold space for him, but I can also be like, bro, it's time for you to man up, right? And I can bring that back to him and I can rebuild him back up, right? Once there's that safe space of opening and sharing and stuff like that and that freedom, right? And then there's also accountability. Men can create accountability for men that women just it doesn't sink into the same amount, I don't feel, as with men giving accountability. So so
yeah,
yeah,
it's a different beast. I was actually gonna, and
yes.
this might be like when we come back from break, but just thinking about, have you ever been held by the feminine, right, or by your woman and where you absolutely feel that safety, that
Mhm.
emotional safety, where you feel
Mhm.
like you are held,
Yeah. Yeah,
and maybe
for
it's something
sure.
to, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I can definitely dive into a couple experiences on that after the break for sure. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So think about that for yourself, where you feel like you've actually been held by the feminine, and what you want out of your intimacy and partnership. So we'll be right back. Hello, and we are back speaking with Kevin Hawkins, who is a somatic-based sex coach. And we're just going to continue. We've been talking around the feminine and the masculine, and I just want to dive into regarding your own experience with the feminine energy and wounded energy, and like just your how you stepped into your own. I'm going to say your health, your healthy,
Hmm.
your healthy self.
Right. Yeah. Um, well, the moment that really sticks out in my mind was about a year and a bit ago. I had a sleepless night, wrestling with my own wounded feminine, right? And a lot of times we call this kind of this wounded mother energy, right? And all night long, for whatever reason, I couldn't sleep, and I guess having these visions of myself in across from this divine feminine energy that was inside of me. And I remember sitting over here being in my wounded masculine, that's kind of like needing justification, needing support and wanting that stuff and being, needy, right? And then I would move over into my strong and healthy masculine, where I was self-sufficient and strong and capable and helpful and powerful in myself and stuff like that. And I was going back and forth all night long, running these scenarios with this divine feminine energy inside of me. And I realized a couple things. First, her response to me was the same no matter which state I was in, right? Like her loving care was the same no matter which energy I was in. What I realized was how I felt when I was in my wounded masculine, my younger, immature masculine, and when I was in my older, and the relationship and how that was different. she shows up the same way inside of you, your divine feminine. But when you are a mature masculine, you have a whole different relationship with her, and it is so much more intimate. It is so much more rewarding, and like there's growth there, there's potential there. Whereas that wounded masculine that I was in was really just still needing a lot of stuff, needing to take, needing to consume, needing to demand, needing to have all these things, right? And I kind of call that my awakening of my wounded mother energy and the beginning process of healing that inside of me. And it was an incredible moment, and I will always remember it as a big turning point in my relationship with the feminine energy in me and
Mhm.
my relationship with it. And ever since then, I have in my been able to in my masculine start to really step into this edgy side of me that is still safe and healthy, right? So what creates unhealthy and unsafe masculine is lack of embodiment, lack of attunement to
Mhm.
yourself and to those around you, lack of consent, right? And lack of understanding that you no longer need something, right? When we are grabby, takey, demanding, um, controlling, we're trying to solve a need inside of us, right? So when those are all satisfied, you're actually able to like grow as a man. And I mean, when I say grow, I mean like swell the beast inside of you, right?
Mhm.
When those things are out of place, that beast is treacherous and dangerous and causes harm to society. But when it is in check with that with the healthy masculine and a healthy feminine mother wounding, if you might say, when that's been processed properly, you're able to actually start to stand into this like monster that you are, this powerful beast of a man, right? And I remember after that moment of wrestling with the divine feminine side of me, I actually started to tiptoe into bringing out this monster, like even in the bedroom, right? Where I'm actually like raging
Yeah.
raging on someone, right? And not in a way to like put them down or hurt them, right? I'm still checking in, I'm still in consent, I'm still like attuned to them, but
Mhm.
I'm able to rage within that healthy environment and really let out some, contained thing that needs to be expressed. You might call them emotions, right? Repressed emotions, right? So with my beloved, like I can just drop into this huge animal energy and I'm checking in. I'm not being mean, but I'm really like I'm embodying this monstrous energy and she loves it.
Well, yeah,
She
you're in
loves
your
it.
primal, right? Like how many women are starving, craving
Craving.
for that like unleashing. It's like, and
Right.
it's not like unleashing like I'm not in the room unleashing.
No.
No, and it's this incredible like presence, right? Women, what I think like the number one thing that women will say they crave is this presence and absolute bringing of this primalness that comes with heart and
Yes.
consciousness.
Yes.
So,
And that
and
is
then
intimacy.
and that is intimacy.
That is
Absolutely.
intimacy.
Presence with connection. Otherwise,
Right.
it's like, it's just, and so many people think they are in the room
Right.
and they're not. They're just, like you said, this is what it is. It's
Right.
just sex.
It's
We're
just
going through,
sex.
I'm getting my orgasm. Oh,
Right.
I'm sorry. Did you, didn't you, whatever. And,
Right.
but that there's like this like profound like connection. And then I think you can, I don't want to say you can do anything, like obviously again with
Yeah.
consent and so on. But
Yeah.
and in this, I just want to backtrack for a second because I don't want to
Yeah.
lose this, is in terms of like the mother wounding, I just want you to give a little bit of a clear example of where that comes from, like what that looks like, what your own experience was of like, that incites that wounding and how
Mhm.
that manifests itself.
Yeah,
So people
sure.
can like see it in themselves.
Right, sure. Um, I think it can show up in different ways, but I think for me, because I want to speak to my experience, that was a need inside of me for validation, right? And that, and we might even say that was some wounding from my first marriage,
Mhm.
um, in that, I wasn't getting that sexual validation maybe, and that element that was a really big and important part of me was just not getting fulfilled. And so I think for inside of me, it was this need for validation, this need to um, placate, this need to, take care of so that I am in your graces, right? So it was very conditional. It was very
Yeah.
conditional, right? And so that's kind of how it showed up inside of me. I I think there's many ways it can show up, but that's how it was for me. And this validating, this need to like please, right? And I was doing it so that I wouldn't rock the boat. I wouldn't, have to deal with negative emotions from the feminine in my life, right? I wanted to avoid that because I didn't know how to navigate it.
No, I
So
know.
if
It's
I
like a
like
lot of this, right?
that's
A lot of
right.
men
Yeah.
just do the retreating, like, I need
That's
my
right.
cave and I don't know when I'm reemerging
That's
because
right.
until
Yep.
that storm is over, I'm
That's
out,
right. That's
right?
right. Yeah. And that is misattunement. That's
Hmm.
right. That is lack of intimacy, right? You are pulling yourself away from connection because you don't know how to deal with this big, powerful, crazy, chaotic chaos feminine, right?
Right.
And so learning how to sit in that storm and to
Mhm.
hold the container while the storm rages, that's that mature masculine energy, right? That people can work on and get better at. And so now I don't need to placate the feminine. I don't need to like tiptoe around her. I can hold my own. I can be who I am because I know how to hold the feminine energy within me and within someone else, right? And so it's the masculine is a container space. I like to think of it as like this aqueduct sometimes, right? And the feminine energy is the thing that's flowing, rushing through all this energy, emotions, thoughts, right? Just rushing down. And the masculine is just holding this grounding space for it to flow through, right? And once you get good at that, then the water's not scary. Then the raging of the feminine is not like a strike against me. It's not being like, oh, where did I fail? Where did I, not show up, right? It's more of a like, no, she just needs to move, so just hold space for it, right?
And
Um,
it's a boundary, which is what something I love about, like we were talking
yes,
about the masculine. I mean, there is
yes,
comfort in a boundary, right?
yes,
Like I mean, I know I'm a very emotional creature, right? And
right,
me at 20 was like unhinged, right? Like
right,
just ah! And definitely, through
right,
decades
right,
of real work and coming into my own,
right,
I'm still, I mean, I realize like I'm like, oh, I don't need to squash this energy. I also want to be met as I am and be as I
right,
am and be the flow through the
right,
container.
right,
And there that healthy space of like, oh yeah, no, I'm a container that holds and has boundaries.
right. Yeah,
Whereas, this flow, yes, she's
yeah,
wild, but
right,
she's also not taking like a drill through the
right.
aqueduct or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah. Well,
So
she can
it's not
try.
abusive, right? Like,
She
and
can
she will
try,
try.
but
Yeah, she can try.
for the healthy masculine, it's like, oh, I understand,
Yeah,
right?
I
You
understand.
drill
Yeah.
a hole, I'll fill it. That's okay,
That's
right?
right.
And that's where the healthy masculine comes in, is that it's like, it's okay. I can handle whatever you bring, right? And as soon as you
Mhm.
bring that energy, the feminine is able to rage, and then the storm calms. Because again, the storm just has this excess energy. It needs to get it away. It needs to drill holes in the aqueduct. Let it. Let it. If you are a solid, stable man, let it drill holes because you know how to fix your own holes. You know how to be like, hey, that kind of hurt a little bit. She was raging. She needed to let go, right? And that's where that
Yeah, and not take it on.
unconditional love
Yeah.
starts to come into play, right? If you want to dance with the feminine, you need to
Hmm.
be okay with like getting your head pounded against the rock a couple times. It takes strength to be a man in this society. It takes strength and bravery to be with a feminine, right? It is hard work, but that's what men are designed for. That's what that healthy masculine energy is designed for, right? And when we're in our unhealthy or immature, then we're like, hey, she drilled a hole in my aqueduct and I'm leaking everywhere, right? And then you get wounded over that, right? And you don't understand, like, hey, you actually have the capacity inside of you to fix that little hole, right?
Yeah.
And then after a while, if it's happening too much, of course, you need to have your boundaries as well. But what I have found is that the feminine energy loves container, it hates cages, right?
Yeah.
I want to think of a bird here, right? A bird in a cage is controlled, right? And no woman wants to be controlled. They want boundaries. And I want to think of it more like a nest. Birds are
Mm.
always coming back to the nest to rest at night and stuff like that. Why? You have all of these branches. Why come back to the nest? Because there's containment there.
Totally.
Cage, not control,
Absolutely.
but containment, this safe space that's been created. And that's
Mhm.
really how the masculine needs to view themselves, and not as a cage, but as a nest for this bird who can open her wings and fly anywhere she needs to and trust that she'll come back to the nest, right? That to that container that you have created for her. So,
Yeah, agree. I mean, and it's funny that you said that because I always thought about it like the Grand Canyon, right? Like I think
right.
there's the container and the masculine, and we don't have time. Like there's so much to talk about. We could
So
do
much
this like
stuff.
for so much time, and we could do this like there's so many things that we didn't even touch. Like this is like scratching the surface. I didn't get
That's
to go
true.
anywhere. Yeah, I mean, juicy and like really like break everything open. But
Yeah.
just looking at like for myself. um, Knowing that I don't like to be controlled whatsoever, but I
Mhm.
also know that the masculine doesn't, right? Like it's always seeking some form of release and death, right? And so, and that's probably all I'm going to leave it with today. So, because I
Yeah.
know we've got like a minute left, and so I'm just going to. Save again. So thank you for joining me
Yes.
here, everyone.
Yes. Thank
Thank
you.
you, Kevin Hawkins. This is not the first or the last, sorry, not the last conversation we're going to have. If you would like to work with them, I believe it's khintimacycoaching.com.
Right.
If you're curious about working with me, it's gwenmcarsley.com, creator of Luvology. Thank you for joining us. I am going to invite everyone to think about our discussion today, and I welcome people into writing me a moon letter, which is just think about like where you may have held secrets, your own woundings, anything that you'd like to express. I will be reading them out on air when you have the courage to send them to me. Wink, wink. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Have a lovely week and see you next week. Thank you for listening to Skin and Soul with me, Gwenm. Join me Fridays at 10 a.m. PST on Transformation Talk Radio. Catch the podcast anytime on your favorite platforms. You can follow me on Instagram at Luvology. Ready to take the next step? Book a compatibility call with me at gwenmcarsley.com.